Now that we have maps installed and have the keys, let's proceed to the Hello World stage. The obvious Hello World is this thing. We just create map container and show it. This looks awful. That is the map component with OpenStreetMap. It takes a while to load and isn't exactly attractive. So let's add the JavaScript key to the constructor, so the fallback will be the JavaScript maps instead of OpenStreetMaps. This looks more familiar and modern. Now we could use Google Map Provider with map component, which might improve the look of the component a bit, but I don't see a reason to dwell on that when we can just use the JavaScript fallback. In the past, before Z-Order appears, that made some sense, but it no longer does. Now, let's configure the build hints for the individual OS settings. First, the Android native map API key needs to be specified using this exact syntax. You can copy and paste it from the Maps GitHub page where all of these keys are listed. Don't forget to replace your Android API key with the key you generated in the URLs I mentioned in the previous module. Next, we need to do that same thing for iOS and specify the iOS key in this build hint. And last but not least, we need the JavaScript key too. Normally, this isn't essential since we pass the JavaScript key in the constructor. We need this for the JavaScript port where the key needs to be specified in another location. Building this to native Android produces this result on the device. However, the iOS build fails. Looking at the build error, it's clear there was a null pointer exception when running the application, but this is an error from the build server. As you might recall, iOS native applications need a splash screen. The Codename1 build server solves this by running the application several times in the servers, where it generates splash screens for us. However, the build servers don't support the web browser component. The reason for this is simple. The web browser component will look different on the device, and so a screenshot won't work well. The solution is to handle a case where a web browser isn't supported. This fix is relatively trivial. If web browser isn't supported, it has to be the iOS screenshot mode, and in this case we can just mention that we are loading. A nice graphic might be relevant here if we want to refine this further. And now that this was built, it looks like this in iOS.